Hey, well, this is Zaccheus with another live word of the day, and I thank you for tuning in. And today's message, on today's episode, I will be talking about the story of Ruth and Naomi in the Old Testament. And in this story, I'm going to just explore the dynamics and explore how God said things you can have your plans and you can make your plans, but sometimes things don't just work out the way things don't work out the way you planned. And happens to a lot of us. Things don't work out the way you planned, and God has a different plan. God has you take a different route altogether because you already have your life planned out. And all of a sudden now things change. Well, join me as I dive into the story of in the Old Testament, Ruth and Naomi. And famine hit the land. Famine hit the land, and Naomi had to leave with her family, her husband, and their two sons, as famine stricken the land of their resources. They had to leave so they can get refuge to find food and resources to keep them alive. Let's turn to a scripture, Ruth chapter 3, verses 11. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask for all my fellow townsmen. Know that you are a worthy woman. And Naomi was a woman after God's own heart, or Naomi was a woman that followed God. And she had to obey the Lord to keep her family safe. So God told her to move, and He would protect her. So as they journeyed out of the country to another country to seek refuge, they said goodbye, and they don't know what the next plan was, but the next plan, they know they had to leave. They know the next plan, they had to leave. But in order for them to leave, they had to seek a country that's prosperous, a country that has resources to help them to stay alive. And they did that. Naomi obeyed God and took her family out of that country to seek elsewhere. And God is a provider. He's going to provide the resources and food that they need to survive. And He always makes a way. He always provides for His people. Always provides for His people. Never leaving His people hungry. Especially when you're obedient to God and God tells you to make that move. It was not in your plan, but because of what hit the land, you had to make the move. They had to make the move. Moab and Naomi. Tragedy struck again as time went on. Naomi, left as a widow with her two sons, because her husband passed away. Husband passed away. After a while, husband passed away. It just left her as a widow to raise her two sons. And man, you talk about tragedy, you talk about trials. Naomi continued to mourn for the passing of her husband, and her two sons, Milon and Chilion, mourned the passing of their father. They continued to live in the land, and Naomi continued to stay with them until Naomi continued to mourn for the passing of her husband. Milon and Chilion, Naomi's two sons, took the Moabites' wives, and they lived until tragedy hit again. Naomi lost her two sons now. Lost her two sons. This is crazy. She lost her two sons. What a tragedy. And Oprah and Ruth the two Moabite women, became widows. Ruth, no, Naomi mourned with Ruth and Oprah, and Naomi was in sorrow, great sorrow once more because she lost her husband, and now she outlived her two sons. And Ruth and Oprah lost their husbands. Naomi and Ruth became close, but sorrow hit that land, sorrow hit that family a great deal. And I just could imagine what they was going through at that moment, at that time. Naomi lost her husband. Now her daughter-in-law, Ruth, lost her husband, which is Naomi's son. And it's just a sad tragedy, sad moment. All tragedy is sad. All tragedy is sad. But just a sad moment that Naomi went through along with her daughter in laws. It was sometime after the death. It was sometime after the death of Naomi's two sons that she learned the Lord had visited his people in Judah and given them bread. Life was difficult for Naomi in Moab, so she decided to return to Judah, where she would have a better chance of surviving. Ruth begged to go with Naomi, her mother-in-law. She couldn't just see her life just living alone without Naomi because she'd been with Naomi for a long time. Um, and they have something in common. Naomi's husband died years ago, and Naomi's son, her husband, Ruth's husband, died as well. So that's what they had in common. They both lost their spouses. Both lost their spouses, and Ruth could not see journey in life without Naomi because remember they lived together for a long time. For a long time. And now Naomi was leaving and Ruth wanted to follow her mother-in-law. Let's turn to a scripture. Ruth chapter 3 verses 9. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And when we're trusting in the Lord and we're seeking God, He would protect us. He would guide us. He would guide us in a time of storm. And He provide for us. And when you're gonna go through some trials and tribulations in your life. We're gonna face tribulation, but when you're walking with God, there's gonna be tests that come your way. There's gonna be tribulations that come your way. And then God is only allowing those tribulations to linger in your life so He can bless you with better. Let's turn to and Naomi was returning to her land because the famine was over, and she felt that going back would be a start over for her. And Ruth just was committed to following her mother-in-law. Naomi is gonna be food. There's gonna be plenty to eat, healthy food to eat, plenty food that's harvest. That now that the famine is over after all these years, and God was gonna provide, is gonna provide. God is gonna provide because Naomi was obedient, and Ruth came very close to Naomi. Although Oprah uh, decided not to go, but Oprah felt the pain of both because both Oprah experienced loss of her spouse just as her mother-in-law Naomi and her sister-in-law Ruth. So And they became very close, especially Naomi and Ruth, who became very close and came very close to each other as time went on, particularly Ruth and Naomi. And Ruth met the love of her life, and his name was Boaz. She met the love of her life. God blessed her as time went on, and she never met a man like this before, and God blessed her with Boaz. Ruth met the love of her life, and his name was Boaz. Ruth and Boaz was committed to each other. They were in love. They were committed to each other, and they wanted their journey to continue with each other. And I know that Naomi was happy for her, that she could start life over again, and God blessed her with Boaz as well. Ruth and Boaz was committed to each other. They were in love. Ruth told Naomi that wherever you go, I'll go. And she was very faithful to her mother-in-law Naomi. She told her her deepest secrets, told her that she met somebody, and she just shared a lot with her mother-in-law. Shared a whole lot with her mother-in-law, and the two became very close. Ruth had a humble spirit. As you can see, Ruth is um, collecting the wheat, the barley, and collecting the barley and putting it in the basket for food. And Naomi, seeing the genuineness of Ruth, and she wanted to continue being her mentor, not only a mentor but her friend, and also be like a older mentor and encouragement. Sometimes a lot of us, we had some mentors in our lives and still remember them till this day. I don't know if you had a mentor in your life. I remember having a mentor in my life years and years ago. But the mentors are usually wiser. They're usually more wise than you, and they usually give you good counsel and good guidance as you journey through life. But as time goes on, they're only there for a moment, for a season. And as you get older, you got to live your own life. To make a long story shorter, it turns out that Boaz was a relative of Ruth's deceased husband. And Boaz, that was a man and Ruth, according to the Jewish law, he had the right to step in and take care of the foreign widow, widow. He had the right to take care of Ruth, the foreign widow. Boaz made a commitment in front of the Bethlehem town's leaders that he would act as Ruth's kinsman, redeemer, and marry her. Boaz could not wait until he told the councilmen of the city of Moab that he was going to marry Ruth. And he did that, married her, and they continued on their journey as time went on. Ruth went to the field and gathered wheat and barley, and um, and that's what she did. She gathered wheat and barley and continued to gather it for feast. And as time went on, that's what she did in the field. She gathered wheat and barley and continued to be beside Boaz. So these were grains and wheat left behind by the reapers. Naomi told her, "Go, my daughter." So Ruth went. She entered the field and gathered the grains and left behind by the reapers. Now it happened that she ended up in the part of the field belonged to Boaz, was who from the Amalekites family. Just then, and the land had lots of resources, lots of jugs of water too, and that's when Ruth gathered wheat, barley, and water, jugs of water to, and this because there was no longer no more famine in the land where she stayed. Now she stayed with Naomi because remember she was faithful. She's faithful. She is faithful to Naomi, and God supplied them with their needs: wheat, barley, other foods, healthy foods, and also clean water. Ruth and Boaz, as time went on and as they journeyed through life, Naomi was so happy for Ruth. She had a child with her husband Boaz. Ruth and Ruth bore Boaz a child, a son named Obed, and guess what, y'all? And the future father of Jesse, who would become the father of King David. Thus, Ruth was David's great grandmother and is listed as such in the book of Ruth and in the Gospels, Luke and in Matthew. Ruth bore Boaz a child, a son named Obed, and guess what, y'all? And the future father of Jesse, who would become the father of King David. Thus, Ruth was David's great grandmother and is listed as such in the book of Ruth and in the Gospels, Luke and in Matthew. Ruth lost her husband years ago, and she stayed faithful to the Lord, and God blessed her with her husband named Boaz. And Naomi returned back to her land with Ruth, took Ruth back to her land, but God blessed them both and blessed her with more family. And don't ever think that when you go through a tragedy or go through a loss, think that your life is done, your life is over, and you get into a slip into depression. Yes, it hurts to lose a loved one. Yes, it hurts to lose people, and it hurts to lose your life that you had before. Yes, the life that you once knew before, and you had certain things that you was comfortable, but things happen in your life, and you lost certain things in your life. Certain maybe you lost a loved one, and but God has said He's not over with you yet. He will comfort you in a time of sorrow, and people are not replaceable, but things are replaceable. And Naomi, Ruth, and Oprah lost their husbands. And Naomi lost also not only her husband, but she also lost her sons. That's a great loss. That's a great loss. So when you think you got it bad, just remember somebody has it more worse than you. But also, they stay faithful to the Lord, and God was able to bless them with more. Now the live word today is coming out of 1 Timothy chapter 2 verses 1. First of all, then I urge that supplication, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kinds, all who in high praise positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified. Well, this is Zaccheus with another live word of the day. God bless and be safe out there. And if you like what I shared on the story of Ruth and Naomi, smash that like button. Also, subscribe to my channel, Zaccheus Gospel. I always have more coming. God bless. And I thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much. And those who've been consistently supporting me, I thank you as well. Thank you so much. God bless and be safe out there until next time. And if you haven't did it already, smash that like button. Also subscribe to my channel, Zaccheus Gospel. God bless and peace and blessings.